Ethan Carter lived in a small, run-down apartment on the outskirts of Chicago. The city was alive with energy. Skyscrapers piercing the clouds, streets buzzing with people rushing to their destinations. But Ethan felt like he existed in a world far removed from all that excitement. His days blended into one another, filled with endless hours spent under the hood of broken cars at a tiny auto repair shop called Joe's Garage. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills, or at least some of them. Ethan wasn't always this way. Once upon a time, he had dreams bigger than fixing engines and replacing brake pads. He had studied mechanical engineering in college, fueled by a passion for innovation and design. But life had other plans. After graduation, Ethan poured his savings into starting his own business, a custom car modification shop. For a while, things went well. Customers loved his work, and he felt like he was finally making progress towards something meaningful. Then came the recession. Orders dried up, debts piled up, and within 2 years, Ethan was forced to shut down his dream. Failure hit him hard. His wife, unable to cope with the stress, left him shortly after. Alone and overwhelmed, Ethan took whatever job he could find to keep himself afloat. That's how he ended up at Joe's Garage, a dingy little place tucked away in an alley where most customers were locals who couldn't afford anything fancier. The owner, Joe, was a gruff old man with a smoker's cough and a heart of gold. He didn't ask too many questions when Ethan showed up looking desperate for work. All he cared about was whether Ethan knew his way around an engine, and Ethan did. Every morning, Ethan woke up before sunrise, ate a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, and headed to the garage. By 8 a.m., he was already covered in grease, listening to the hum of power tools and the occasional honk of a horn outside. Most days passed in a blur of tire changes, oil leaks, and overheating radiators. Despite the monotony, Ethan prided himself on doing good work. He believed in giving every customer honest service, even if they only drove beat-up sedans or rusted trucks. But no matter how hard he worked, money was always tight. Rent was due, utilities needed paying, and creditors never stopped calling. Sometimes, late at night, Ethan would sit alone in his dimly lit apartment staring at the stack of unpaid bills on his kitchen table. He wondered if he'd ever escape this cycle of struggle. Would he spend the rest of his life buried under debt, fixing cars for strangers while his own dreams gathered dust? One particularly bitter winter morning, as snow blanketed the city and icy winds whipped through the streets, Ethan arrived at the garage to find a sleek black luxury car parked outside. Its engine growled softly, steam rising from beneath the hood. Curious, Ethan stepped closer and saw a sharply dressed man leaning against the driver's door, scrolling through his phone. When the man noticed Ethan approaching, he looked up and offered a polite smile. "Morning," the man said, his voice smooth and confident. "Looks like I've got a bit of trouble here. Can you take a look?" Ethan nodded and grabbed his toolbox. As he popped the hood, he glanced at the car's emblem, a logo he recognized instantly. This wasn't just any luxury vehicle. It belonged to someone wealthy, someone important. Still, Ethan focused on the task at hand. Peering inside, he spotted the problem almost immediately: a cracked radiator hose. It was a relatively simple fix, but given the car's high-end nature, Ethan knew he'd need to be extra careful. While he worked, the man stayed nearby, watching quietly. Eventually, curiosity got the better of Ethan. "These kinds of cars don't usually break down around here," he remarked, trying to sound casual. The man chuckled. "You're right. I'm not exactly in my usual neighborhood. My GPS must have taken a wrong turn." Ethan nodded, sensing there was more to the story but deciding not to pry. Instead, he continued working, tightening bolts and checking connections until he was satisfied everything was in order. When he finally closed the hood, the man extended his hand. "Thanks for your help," he said. "I'm Daniel Harper." Ethan froze for a moment. Daniel Harper? The name sounded familiar. Then it clicked. Harper Tech. One of the biggest tech companies in the world. This man standing in front of him was its CEO. Suddenly, Ethan felt self-conscious, aware of the grease stains on his hands and the worn-out jeans he wore. "No problem," Ethan replied, shaking Daniel's hand awkwardly. Just doing my job. Daniel smiled warmly. Well, I appreciate it. Not everyone would treat me like a regular customer. Ethan shrugged. A car's a car, no matter who owns it. Daniel seemed impressed by the comment. They chatted briefly about the weather and traffic before Daniel handed over a credit card to pay for the repair. To Ethan's surprise, Daniel insisted on paying far more than what the service cost. When Ethan tried to protest, Daniel waved him off. Consider it gratitude, he said firmly. Not many people would treat me the way you did today. Before leaving, Daniel pulled out a business card and handed it to Ethan. If you ever need anything, advice, connections, or even a job, don't hesitate to call me. Ethan accepted the card, though he doubted he'd ever use it. As he watched Daniel drive away, he couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Maybe it was the warmth in Daniel's smile or the sincerity in his voice. Whatever it was, it lingered in Ethan's mind long after the luxury car disappeared down the snowy street. That night, as Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he thought about the encounter. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to imagine what might happen if he reached out to Daniel. What if this chance meeting wasn't just luck? What if it was the beginning of something bigger? Little did Ethan know, his life was about to change in ways he couldn't possibly predict. The days following Daniel Harper's visit passed uneventfully for Ethan. Life at Joe's garage continued as it always had. Cars came in broken, Ethan fixed them, and customers left satisfied. Yet something about that brief encounter lingered in the back of his mind. It wasn't just the fact that a billionaire CEO had walked into his tiny garage. It was the way Daniel had treated him with genuine respect. Ethan couldn't remember the last time someone like Daniel had spoken to him as an equal, instead of just another mechanic. Ethan kept the business card Daniel had given him tucked away in his wallet. Occasionally, he'd pull it out during quiet moments at work or late at night when he sat alone in his apartment. He'd stare at the embossed letters spelling Daniel Harper, CEO, Harper Tech, and wonder what kind of person would offer help so freely to a stranger. Was it just polite courtesy? Or did Daniel truly mean what he said? Despite his curiosity, Ethan hesitated to reach out. What could he possibly say? Hey, remember me? The guy who fixed your fancy car? It felt ridiculous even thinking about it. Besides, Ethan reasoned with himself, someone like Daniel probably forgot all about their meeting the moment he drove off. Why would a man worth billions care about a struggling mechanic? But fate has a way of nudging people toward opportunities they're too afraid to take on their own. One evening, after closing up the garage, Ethan returned home to find yet another threatening letter from one of his creditors. This time, it wasn't just a warning, it was a final notice. If Ethan didn't pay within 2 weeks, they threatened legal action. Panic clawed at his chest as he stared at the paper, his mind racing with impossible solutions. He didn't have enough money saved to cover the debt, and taking on more loans seemed like throwing fuel onto a fire already out of control. Desperation can make people do things they wouldn't normally consider. That night, as snow fell silently, outside his window, Ethan dug Daniel's card out of his wallet. His fingers trembled slightly as he held it, torn between hope and doubt. Finally, after what felt like hours of internal debate, he picked up his phone and dialed the number printed neatly on the card. To his surprise, Daniel answered almost immediately. Hello? His voice was calm and friendly, completely devoid of the arrogance Ethan expected from someone in his position. Hi. Ethan stammered, suddenly unsure of himself. This is Ethan Carter. You stopped by my garage a few weeks ago. I worked on your car. There was a brief pause before Daniel replied, Of course. Ethan, how are you doing? I'm okay, Ethan lied, fumbling for words. Look, I know this might sound strange, but I wanted to thank you again for stopping by, and also, he hesitated, his throat tightening. I wanted to ask if maybe we could talk sometime about opportunities. Daniel didn't miss a beat. Absolutely, he said without hesitation. Why don't you come by my office tomorrow afternoon? We can grab coffee and chat. Relief washed over Ethan, though it was mixed with nerves. Are you sure? I mean, I don't want to waste your time. You're not wasting anything. Daniel interrupted gently. Trust me, Ethan. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. works for me. Does that sound good? Yes. Ethan replied quickly. Thank you. When he hung up, Ethan sat there for a long moment, staring at his phone in disbelief. Had that really just happened? A part of him still doubted whether this was a good idea, but deep down, he couldn't ignore the spark of hope igniting inside him. The next day, Ethan arrived at Harper Tech headquarters feeling completely out of place. The building was a towering glass structure that gleamed under the winter sun, surrounded by impeccably dressed professionals hurrying in and out. Ethan wore his best outfit, a pair of dark jeans and a button-up shirt. But he couldn't shake the feeling that everyone around him was judging him. Inside, the lobby was sleek and modern, with marble floors and walls adorned with digital displays, showcasing Harper Tech's latest innovations. Ethan approached the reception desk where a young woman greeted him with a warm smile. "I'm here to see Daniel Harper," he said nervously. She nodded and pressed a button on her headset. "Mr. Harper, your guest is here." Moments later, she gestured toward the elevators. "He'll meet you upstairs." As Ethan stepped off the elevator on the top floor, he saw Daniel waiting for him. Dressed in a tailored suit, Daniel looked every bit the successful CEO, yet his demeanor remained approachable and welcoming. "Ethan," he exclaimed, extending a hand. "Good to see you again." They shook hands, and Daniel led him to a spacious conference room overlooking the city skyline. A pot of coffee and 2 cups sat waiting on the table. As they settled in, Daniel poured them each a cup and leaned back in his chair. "So," he began, "what's been going on with you?" Ethan hesitated, unsure where to start. "Honestly, things haven't been great," he admitted finally. "I've got some financial issues I'm trying to sort out, and I guess I thought maybe you could point me in the right direction." Daniel listened intently, nodding occasionally. "Tell me more," he encouraged. "What do you enjoy doing? What are your passions?" For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to open up. He talked about his love for engineering and design, how he used to dream of creating innovative solutions to real-world problems. He shared stories of his failed business venture and the lessons he learned along the way. To his surprise, Daniel didn't interrupt or judge him. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions, encouraging Ethan to dig deeper into his thoughts and ideas. By the end of their conversation, Ethan felt lighter, as though a weight he hadn't realized he was carrying had been lifted. Daniel smiled warmly. "You know, Ethan, I think you're exactly the kind of person we need at Harper Tech." Ethan blinked, stunned. "What do you mean?" "We're working on a new project," Daniel explained. "Something groundbreaking. But it's not just about technology. It's about solving problems that affect everyday people. People like you. Your experience gives you a perspective most engineers lack. I'd love for you to join us." Ethan's heart raced. "Are you serious? Me? At Harper Tech?" "Absolutely," Daniel said firmly. "Think about it. You'll be consulting on designs, offering insights based on your practical knowledge. We'll compensate you fairly, of course, and provide training if needed. All I need is your willingness to try." Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, though he blinked them away quickly. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "Thank you." "There's no rush," Daniel assured him. "Take some time to think it over. But trust me, Ethan, you deserve a second chance, and I believe this could be it." On the train ride home, Ethan replayed the conversation in his mind over and over. Could this really be happening? Was it possible that after all these years of struggle, opportunity had finally found him? For the first time in a long time, Ethan allowed himself to dream again. Not wild, unrealistic dreams, but small, hopeful ones. Maybe he could pay off his debts. Maybe he could rebuild his life. And maybe, just maybe, he could rediscover the passion he once had for creating something meaningful. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Ethan made a decision. Whatever fears or doubts he had, he wouldn't let them hold him back anymore. This was his chance to prove to himself and to the world that he was capable of greatness. Little did he know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would change his life forever. The next morning, Ethan woke up earlier than usual. The city outside was still cloaked in darkness, the faint glow of streetlights reflecting off the icy sidewalks. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall, replaying Daniel's offer in his mind. Consulting at Harper Tech, working alongside brilliant engineers and designers. It sounded like something out of a dream he had long since given up on. But doubt lingered. Who was he kidding? A guy who spent his days fixing leaky radiators and replacing worn-out brake pads wasn't cut out for a high-tech company like Harper Tech. What could he possibly contribute? His skills were practical, hands-on, nothing fancy or innovative. Still, Daniel's words echoed in his head. Your experience gives you a perspective most engineers lack. Was it possible that his struggles, his failures might actually be an asset? After much deliberation, Ethan decided to take the leap. If nothing else, he owed it to himself to try. That afternoon, he called Daniel and accepted the offer. I'm in, he said, his voice trembling with both excitement and fear. Thank you for believing in me. Daniel's response was warm and encouraging. I knew you'd come around, Ethan. Welcome aboard. We'll start small and ease you into things. Don't worry, you'll do great. Ethan's first day at Harper Tech was overwhelming. As he walked through the gleaming glass doors of the headquarters, he felt like an imposter among the polished professionals bustling around him. Everyone seemed so confident, so sure of themselves. He stuck out like a sore thumb in his modest attire, clutching a notebook and a pen as if they were lifelines. Daniel greeted him personally and introduced him to the team. There was Mia, the lead designer with a sharp eye for detail. Raj, the tech genius who spoke in rapid-fire jargon Ethan barely understood. And Sarah, the project manager who kept everyone on track with her no-nonsense attitude. They all welcomed him warmly, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong. You'll get used to it, Daniel assured him later, noticing Ethan's unease. Just focus on what you know best. Real-world challenges. That's your superpower here. Over the next few weeks, Ethan immersed himself in the project. Harper Tech was developing a line of eco-friendly vehicles powered by renewable energy sources. The goal was ambitious. Create affordable, sustainable cars that could compete with traditional gasoline-powered models while reducing environmental impact. It was a bold vision, one that required input from experts across multiple fields. First, Ethan struggled to find his footing. The technical discussions often went over his head, filled with terms like aerodynamic efficiency and energy density optimization. He worried that his contributions would be dismissed as irrelevant. But then something unexpected happened. During a brainstorming session, Mia brought up a challenge: how to make the vehicle's battery system more durable without increasing its weight. I've seen this problem before, Ethan interjected hesitantly. In older cars, batteries tend to fail because of heat buildup. Maybe we can redesign the cooling system to prevent that? Everyone turned to look at him, surprised. Mia frowned thoughtfully. That's actually a good point. Heat management is critical. Can you elaborate? Encouraged, Ethan explained how he'd dealt with similar issues in the past, using simple solutions like improved ventilation and better insulation. His ideas sparked a lively discussion, and soon the team was sketching out new designs based on his suggestions. It was a turning point for Ethan. For the first time, he realized that his years of working on ordinary cars weren't wasted. They gave him insights that others lacked. While the engineers focused on cutting-edge technology, Ethan reminded them of the importance of reliability and practicality. Together, they began bridging the gap between innovation and real-world application. As weeks turned into months, Ethan grew more comfortable in his role. He started attending meetings confidently, offering input whenever he saw an opportunity to simplify or improve a design. His colleagues began seeking his advice, valuing his ability to identify potential problems. Early on, slowly but surely, Ethan became an integral part of the team. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting, Daniel pulled Ethan aside. "You're doing incredible work," he said sincerely. "I knew you had it in you." Ethan smiled, though he still found it hard to believe. "Thanks, Daniel. I never imagined I'd end up here." "Well, you deserve every bit of success you're finding," Daniel replied. "And trust me, this is just the beginning." Despite his growing confidence, Ethan faced challenges along the way. Some members of the team initially doubted his abilities, dismissing his ideas as too simplistic. One engineer in particular made snide comments about Ethan's lack of formal training. "We're building the future, not patching up old clunkers," he sneered during one heated debate. Ethan felt the sting of those words but refused to let them discourage him. Instead, he doubled down on his efforts, proving his worth through action rather than argument. When the same engineer encountered a roadblock with a prototype suspension system, Ethan stepped in and solved the issue, using a clever modification he'd learned from years of hands-on experience. After that, even the skeptics began to respect him. Another hurdle came in the form of self-doubt. Despite his successes, Ethan often questioned whether he truly belonged in such a prestigious environment. Late at night, as he pored over blueprints and schematics, he wondered if he was holding the team back. But each time he voiced these concerns to Daniel, his mentor reassured him. "You're exactly where you're meant to be," Daniel told him firmly. "Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise." With Daniel's support, Ethan pushed forward, determined to prove that he could rise to the occasion. He spent countless hours studying new concepts, learning everything he could about renewable energy systems and modern automotive technology. Though it was exhausting, he found joy in the process, rediscovering the passion for engineering that had once driven him. By the time spring arrived, the project was nearing completion. The team unveiled their first fully functional prototype, a sleek, futuristic car powered entirely by solar panels and advanced battery technology. It was a marvel of engineering, combining cutting-edge innovation with practical design elements inspired by Ethan's input. When the car rolled out of the workshop for its initial test drive, Ethan stood beside Daniel, watching with pride as it glided smoothly down the track. "This is amazing," Ethan whispered, awestruck. "We actually did it." Daniel grinned. "No, you did it, Ethan. Without your contributions, we wouldn't have gotten this far." For the first time in years, Ethan felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond fixing a broken engine or paying off another bill. This was bigger than him. It was about making a difference, about creating something that could change lives. And he had played a vital role in bringing it to life. As the sun set over the city skyline, casting golden light across the testing grounds, Ethan realized that he wasn't the same person who had walked into Daniel's office months ago. He had grown, not just professionally but personally. He had faced his fears, embraced his strengths, and proven to himself that he was capable of greatness. But the journey was far from over. Little did Ethan know, Harper Tech had even greater plans in store for him, plans that would elevate his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The success of the prototype marked a turning point for Harper Tech. The sleek, eco-friendly car, powered by renewable energy and designed with practicality in mind, quickly became the centerpiece of the company's upcoming launch. For Ethan, it was a moment of validation, a tangible reminder that his hard work and determination had paid off. But as thrilling as the achievement was, it also brought new challenges and responsibilities. Ethan found himself spending long hours at Harper Tech, fine-tuning every detail of the vehicle. His role expanded beyond consulting. He was now actively involved in testing, troubleshooting, and even presenting updates to senior executives. At first, the pressure intimidated him. He worried about making mistakes or being exposed as someone who didn't belong in such a high-stakes environment. But over time, he grew more confident, trusting his instincts and leaning on the expertise of his teammates when needed. One particularly grueling week, Ethan stayed late at the office almost every night, poring over data and running simulations to ensure the car's performance met expectations. By Friday evening, exhaustion had taken its toll. As he slumped in his chair, staring at rows of numbers on his computer screen, Daniel walked into the room. "You look like you haven't slept in days," Daniel said with a chuckle, setting down 2 cups of coffee on Ethan's desk. Ethan managed a tired smile. Feels like it. This has to be perfect before the launch. It will be, Daniel assured him. But perfection doesn't mean burning yourself out. Take a break. Go home, get some rest. I can't, Ethan replied stubbornly. There's still so much to do. Daniel pulled up a chair and sat beside him. Listen, Ethan, you've already done more than anyone could have asked for. Don't let this become overwhelming. Remember why you're here, to make a difference, not to run yourself into the ground. His words struck a chord. Ethan realized he'd been so focused on proving himself that he'd forgotten to appreciate how far he'd come. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. You're right. I'll wrap up soon. That weekend, Ethan forced himself to step away from work. He spent Saturday morning taking a long walk through the city, marveling at the sights and sounds he used to ignore. The laughter of children playing in the park, the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting from a bakery, the gentle hum of traffic blending with distant chatter. It felt strange yet refreshing to slow down after months of relentless effort. When Monday rolled around, Ethan returned to the office with renewed energy. The team worked tirelessly to finalize preparations for the launch event, scheduled just weeks away. Posters featuring the eco-friendly car were plastered across billboards throughout the city, and anticipation buzzed in the air. Journalists and industry experts clamored for invitations, eager to see what Harper Tech had created. On the day of the launch, Ethan arrived at the venue early, dressed in a suit Daniel had insisted he buy. Standing backstage, he watched as guests filled the auditorium. Investors, reporters, celebrities, and tech enthusiasts all gathered to witness the unveiling. Nervous excitement bubbled inside him as he adjusted his tie for the 100th time. Finally, the lights dimmed, and Daniel stepped onto the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. After a brief introduction, he began discussing Harper Tech's mission to revolutionize transportation and combat climate change. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the reveal of the prototype. As the curtain lifted and the car emerged under a spotlight, the crowd erupted into cheers. Its smooth curves, minimalist design, and gleaming solar panels drew gasps of admiration. Cameras flashed, reporters scribbled notes furiously, and social media feeds lit up with photos and videos. After the demonstration, Daniel invited Ethan to join him on stage. This project wouldn't have been possible without the dedication and ingenuity of our entire team, Daniel announced. But I want to highlight one person in particular, Ethan Carter. His insights and experience were instrumental in bringing this vision to life. Ethan froze for a moment, unsure whether to step forward. Encouraged by Daniel's nod, he walked hesitantly to the microphone, feeling hundreds of eyes on him. His palms were sweaty and his voice trembled slightly as he began to speak. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you to everyone at Harper Tech for believing in me, he said. I never imagined I'd stand here today working alongside such talented individuals. This car represents hope for a cleaner future, for innovation, and for second chances. I'm proud to have played a small part in its creation. The audience erupted into applause again, and Ethan felt a lump rise in his throat. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel proud, not just of what he'd accomplished, but of who he had become. The aftermath of the launch was a whirlwind of media attention and public acclaim. Interviews poured in, and Ethan found himself featured in articles alongside Daniel and other key members of the team. Reporters praised Harper Tech's bold initiative, hailing the eco-friendly car as a game-changer in the automotive industry. Investors lined up to support the project, and orders began flooding in before production even started. Amidst the chaos, Ethan struggled to adjust to his newfound fame. People recognized him on the street, asking for autographs or selfies. Strangers congratulated him, calling him an inspiration. While flattering, the attention made him uncomfortable. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and he worried about losing sight of his roots. One evening, after another long day of interviews, Ethan confided in Daniel. I don't know if I can handle all this, he admitted. It feels like too much sometimes. Daniel smiled knowingly. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, Ethan. Success is a learning curve, just like anything else. The important thing is to stay grounded, to remember where you came from and why you started. Ethan nodded, grateful for Daniel's wisdom. Over the next few weeks, he made a conscious effort to balance his professional obligations with personal reflection. He visited Joe's garage occasionally, catching up with old co-workers and sharing stories about his journey. Seeing their faces light up with pride reminded him of the value of humility and gratitude. As production ramped up, Ethan faced another challenge: managing the transition from prototype to mass manufacturing. Scaling up required addressing logistical issues, ensuring quality control, and maintaining cost efficiency, all tasks that pushed him out of his comfort zone. Once again, doubt crept in. Could he handle the responsibility? Would his lack of formal training hinder the process? But Ethan refused to give up. He leaned heavily on his team, collaborating closely with engineers, designers, and supply chain experts to overcome obstacles. Together, they developed innovative solutions, streamlining processes and optimizing resources. Each hurdle they cleared brought them closer to their goal, reinforcing Ethan's belief in the power of teamwork. By summer, the first batch of cars rolled off the assembly line, ready to be shipped to customers worldwide. Watching the finished products leave the factory floor filled Ethan with a sense of fulfillment he'd never experienced before. These weren't just machines. They were symbols of resilience, creativity, and possibility. That fall, Harper Tech held a private celebration to mark the successful rollout of the eco-friendly car. Employees gathered in a luxurious banquet hall, enjoying food, music, and camaraderie. Ethan mingled with colleagues, laughing and reminiscing about the highs and lows of the past year. For the first time in his life, he felt truly content. Toward the end of the evening, Daniel called everyone's attention. Holding up a glass of champagne, he proposed a toast. To Harper Tech, to innovation, and to each and every one of you. Without your hard work and dedication, none of this would have been possible. He turned to Ethan, raising his glass higher. And especially to Ethan Carter, you remind us all that greatness isn't defined by where you start. It's defined by how far you're willing to go. Ethan blushed, raising his own glass shyly. The room erupted into applause, and for a fleeting moment, he felt invincible. Little did he know, Daniel had one final surprise in store, a gesture that would cement Ethan's place in the company and change his life forever. The private celebration at Harper Tech was winding down. The banquet hall, once filled with laughter and music, had grown quieter as people began heading home. Ethan lingered near the bar, sipping a glass of water while reflecting on the whirlwind of events that had brought him here. Just a year ago, he'd been fixing rusted trucks in a dingy garage, struggling to make ends meet. Now he stood among some of the brightest minds in the tech industry, celebrated for his contributions to a groundbreaking project. As Ethan prepared to leave, Daniel approached him with an unreadable expression on his face. "Got a minute?" Daniel asked, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the room. Curious but slightly nervous, Ethan followed Daniel to a small table tucked away from the remaining guests. Daniel pulled out a folder and placed it gently on the table. "Before you go, I want to show you something," he said, sliding the folder toward Ethan. Ethan hesitated before opening it. Inside were several sheets of paper, legal documents stamped with official seals and signatures. At first glance, they looked like contracts or agreements, but one line caught his eye. Partnership agreement. "What's this?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel smiled warmly. "It's exactly what it looks like. You've earned a stake in Harper Tech, a significant one. From now on, you're not just a consultant or employee. You're my partner." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He stared at the papers, unable to process what he was hearing. "Are you serious? Why would you do this?" "Because you deserve it," Daniel replied firmly. "You've worked harder than anyone else on this project. Your ideas, your persistence, your ability to connect with people, all of it has been invaluable. This company wouldn't be where it is today without you." "But I'm just a mechanic," Ethan stammered, still grappling with the enormity of the offer. "I don't have the background, the education." You stopped being just a mechanic the day you walked into my office, Daniel interrupted. Titles don't define greatness, Ethan. Actions do. And you've proven yourself time and again. So yes, I'm serious. Very serious. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes as he flipped through the pages. The agreement outlined his ownership percentage, financial benefits, and responsibilities as a partner. It was more money than he could ever imagine earning in a lifetime. But beyond the numbers, it represented something far greater: validation. For years, Ethan had doubted himself, convinced that failure defined him. Now, he realized that every setback, every struggle had led him to this moment. I don't know what to say, Ethan admitted, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you doesn't feel like enough. You don't need to thank me, Daniel said softly. This is your hard work paying off. All I did was give you a chance, you did the rest. Ethan nodded, overwhelmed by gratitude. As he signed the agreement, he felt a sense of closure, not just to this chapter of his life, but to all the pain and uncertainty that had come before it. He wasn't the same man who had fixed Daniel's luxury car on a snowy winter morning. That version of him was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more hopeful. In the weeks that followed, Ethan settled into his new role as a partner at Harper Tech. His days were busy, filled with meetings, strategy sessions, and brainstorming for future projects. Yet despite the demands of his position, he made time to mentor others, especially those who reminded him of his younger self. He often visited local trade schools and community colleges, sharing his story and encouraging students to pursue their passions no matter how impossible their dreams might seem. One evening, after delivering a motivational speech at a vocational training center, Ethan received a heartfelt letter from a young mechanic named Marcus. In it, Marcus described how Ethan's journey had inspired him to believe in his own potential. If you can rise from fixing cars to running a global company, Marcus wrote, then maybe there's hope for me too. Reading the letter brought tears to Ethan's eyes. He remembered how alone and defeated he'd felt during his darkest days. Knowing that his story could inspire others gave him a profound sense of purpose, one that extended far beyond his success at Harper Tech. As months turned into years, Harper Tech continued to thrive under Ethan and Daniel's leadership. The eco-friendly car became a household name, praised for its affordability, efficiency, and environmental impact. Sales soared, and the company expanded into new markets, exploring innovative solutions for sustainable transportation. Alongside these achievements, Ethan found personal fulfillment in ways he never anticipated. He reconnected with his estranged wife, Sarah, who reached out after seeing his interviews online. Their conversations started tentatively but grew warmer as they shared updates about their lives. Eventually, they reconciled, rebuilding their relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Though they chose not to remarry, they remained close friends, supporting each other through life's ups and downs. Ethan also rediscovered his love for engineering. With Harper Tech's resources at his disposal, he began experimenting with new ideas, projects that combined cutting-edge technology with practical applications. One such initiative focused on developing affordable solar-powered tools for rural communities, helping farmers and artisans improve their livelihoods. Another aimed to create modular housing units designed to withstand natural disasters, providing shelter for displaced families around the world. Through it all, Ethan stayed grounded, reminding himself of the lessons he'd learned along the way. Success hadn't erased his struggles, it had taught him to appreciate them. Every challenge he faced had shaped him into the person he was today, and he vowed never to forget that. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Ethan returned to Joe's garage for the first time in years. The old shop looked much the same as it always had: dingy walls, oil-stained floors, and the faint smell of grease lingering in the air. Joe greeted him warmly, shaking his hand and marveling at how far Ethan had come. "I always knew you were destined for bigger things," Joe said with a grin. "Even when you were elbow-deep in engine parts, I could see the spark in your eyes." Ethan laughed, feeling a pang of nostalgia. "This place saved me, Joe. If it weren't for you giving me a shot back then, I wouldn't be standing here today. Well, don't get all mushy on me, Joe teased, though his eyes glistened with pride. Just promise you won't forget us little guys when you're flying around in your fancy jet planes. Never, Ethan promised, meaning every word. He left the garage. Ethan paused to look back at the building that had once been his entire world. It was humbling to think about how much had changed since those days, and how much remained the same. No matter how successful he became, he knew he owed everything to the grit, determination, and resilience he'd cultivated in places like this. Driving home that evening, Ethan reflected on his journey. From broke to blessed, from despair to triumph, he had traveled a long and winding road. But the destination wasn't wealth or fame. It was the realization that no dream is too big, no obstacle insurmountable, and no person beyond redemption. And, as he parked his eco-friendly car in his driveway, surrounded by the comforts of a life he'd fought so hard to build, Ethan Carter smiled. For the first time in years, he felt truly at peace with himself, with his past, and with the limitless possibilities of his future.